have you had from the McAuliffe campaign thus far?
Well, they're dodging and ducking as best they can. I mean, they haven't so much as rolled out a policy yet. So debating substance is something they seem to be avoiding as much as possible. Right now, there's only 2 debates scheduled, one in Fairfax and one in Richmond, and I think the people in Harrisonburg deserve to have one just as much as the people in Fairfax. And I think that, frankly, the best way for voters to decide what they want to do on November 5th is to see the 2 contending sides facing off with one another and answering questions substantively in their presence.
Well, and in this day and age, it can be tougher and tougher to see candidates. And, I mean, it's tough to get across the entire Commonwealth. I know you spend a great deal of time traveling around. I know Mr. McAuliffe and their ticket will, too. But there's a difference between seeing the 2 candidates in person really hashing out the issues, isn't it?
Oh, no question. I mean, you all have probably seen our 30-second and 1-minute television ads, and I'm proud of the ads we put forward. They're all positive, but they're a minute at most, and it's awfully hard for you to get a sense of a person, much less their policies and their vision, in 30 seconds or a minute or even a mailer. I mean, there's no substitute for being there live and in person, and that's why I think we need to get to every part of Virginia: Winchester, Harrisonburg, Roanoke, Abingdon, Danville, not just Richmond and Fairfax. Interestingly, McAuliffe hasn't even agreed to a debate in the Hampton Roads area, which is the 2nd biggest population area in the whole state. So that's how badly they're ducking these debates. And I believe in openness with the voters. I'm not running as somebody who's been perfect for his whole career. I've certainly made my mistakes, and Terry and I have our differences. I will say there are areas where we do agree. I think Terry's a little more reluctant to acknowledge that than I am. But, we can talk about those, too, in the presence of your voters in your area, and I think that's very appropriate. People just can't get as much of a feel for you when you're on the other side of the state and they're just reading about you in snippets in the paper.
Let's talk about one issue that has come up, and one of those particular issues has been some criticism, even from a couple of Republicans, about the ticket. Yourself, the Lieutenant Governor candidate, Mr. Jackson, and the Attorney General candidate, Mr. Obenchain, and we know very well in this area that this ticket is too conservative. How would you categorize those comments?
That's as reliable as the cicadas, but it happens every 4 years and instead of every 17. I mean, we hear this every single time. You go back and look at what they said in 09, 05, 01, 97, 93. It was always the same thing. So, the name calling and the labeling isn't nearly as important as what you think about each individual candidate. As you say, you all know Mark Obenchain very, very well. I do too. I was his seatmate for 6 years in the Senate. I have tremendous respect for Mark. He's a great lawyer, in addition to being a really good policy leader. And so he's going to make a great attorney general. More attention focuses on EW, and their EW's been a preacher, and he's got to explain some of his past statements, and that's his job, and he's undertaking that as earnestly as he can. But the people of Virginia are going to get to know each of us individually and what our vision for Virginia is. And the history of Virginia voters is that they decide on each of us one at a time. And I respect that. It's really going to be about issues and about the credibility that each candidate brings to the table in pursuing the vision they lay out. And so I'm focusing on a positive pro-jobs creation, economic growth vision for Virginia. I think that's where voters are. It's where I am. It's where I've been for some time. And in fact, I'd point out to him back 4 years ago, in 09, I ran for Attorney General for the first time in about 20 years that a Republican did this, making the economy my top priority in the campaign. And I think you can see my tenure has played that out. We fought over the health care bill that is doing so much damage, and over EPA overreach, which has done such harm to our economy, and we've beaten the EPA. And we've done things like that over my time as AG that have tremendous positive impact for the economy. So that's my focus again in this race.
Let's talk for a moment about the announcement you made yesterday. And basically, it was recovering some funds from the federal government that were owed to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Yep. Is this a practice? Do states have to commonly go after funds from the federal government that they're owed?
No, this should be a ministerial process. And by that, I simply mean it should just be shuffling paperwork. Virginia's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit in the Attorney General's office successfully investigated the largest healthcare fraud case in the history of the United States ever investigated by a state. It was the second largest ever at the time. And by the way, just so you know how good we are at this, the folks in the MIFQ unit in my office also have the second largest healthcare fraud investigation ever undertaken by a state. So that's how good Virginia is at this. We've done this before. And one of the outcomes, so your listeners know, is that when you're the lead investigative agency and you seize criminal money from the defendant, in this case Abbott Pharmaceuticals, we got $1.5 billion award from Abbott Pharmaceuticals. $800 million of that was criminal. $700 million of that was criminal, and about $200 million of that is what's called an asset forfeiture. They give up money, and it gets distributed among the investigating agencies, and Virginia's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit was the lead investigative agency, so we were in line to get the most money, about $125 million, after we publicly complained yesterday. And this is after 8 months of being patient since the court entered the award, and 21 months since the IRS and the federal government knew what the award was going to be, that they finally simply took the first step of saying, okay, this is how much money you're going to get, we're going to release it to you. I would note for you, we haven't gotten the money from the federal government yet. If they had just transferred our money on October 2nd, when the court entered the order, the interest alone on that money would have allowed us to buy about 1,000 bulletproof vests for police officers and sheriff's deputies around Virginia. That's what that kind of delay is costing Virginia and its law enforcement. And the better they can do their job, the better they can keep you and me safe.
Let me ask you one final question, and that is, as you take a look at this particular race, you talked about the economy, but you also mentioned something else, and that is health care. I talked to a lot of folks in local government on this program, also folks involved in the healthcare industry. They still have a tremendous amount of questions about what literally healthcare reform is going to mean. Do you find that to be the case when you talk with folks in government agencies, and what type of challenges are going to present to the Commonwealth?
Jimmy, even beyond local government and state government, if I were to pick one word to describe where the entire healthcare system is right now because of the federal healthcare bill, that word would be uncertainty. I find it not merely among government officials, as you described, but also in the business community. I mean, heck, in the health insurance industry, they don't know what the rules are that they're going to have to live under. The federal government is so behind in setting up its own system that none of us know what the rules of the road are, and the deadlines for a lot of this being put in place come in 2013. There's a reason that Democrat U.S. Senator Max Baucus, who was the Senate sponsor of the federal health care bill, called it a train wreck. It was his own bill, and just a few weeks ago, he called it a train wreck. This is a real mess for us out here in the real world, and the federal government is not getting their act together. And even when it does roll forward, it's very clear that that it's going to drive the cost of health care up a lot. We're going to have to go delete the word affordable from the Affordable Care Act, because that is not going to have anything to do with what's available to our businesses and our local governments and to individuals out in the individual market, the people who are going to get hammered the worst when the new prices kick in October 1st.
That's Virginia's Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, also the Republican candidate for governor. General Cuccinelli, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and being with us today.
My pleasure being with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. WSVA time is 9:55.